Hi, Chad. I believe it's Chad, right? Chad Andrews. It occurred to me, I was starting to record this message, and I was like, oh, I've listened to this gentleman's podcast for so long, but I don't know his name. And I thought, well, maybe that's by design. You don't really lead with it. Or maybe you do, and I just haven't internalized it. But anyway, I was just listening to your podcast on your sort of little notes, your open question, which, by the way, is one of my favorite types of podcasts. I'm really good at ranting and I have my own opinions about things, but it's really fun to just sort of muse on the topic, and it really does sort of take the pressure off you to have like a thesis or point you're working towards, and it sort of can make your audience feel less defensive. I mean, sometimes it's fun. Like, I love listening to like the Run Out podcast because they can be a little spicy sometimes, and they have like kind of opinions, and they sort of lightheartedly fight with each other about various things, and I like that. But it's also fun to just have sort of open-ended things. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but so your question about travel, I think, is a really valid one. As you probably realize, or probably would guess, I'm driving a van, driving a 2018 ProMaster. I used to have another ProMaster. I've lived in both of them for years at a time. Travel nursing in the United States, so not the same thing as living abroad as a financially independent person. However, I travel nursed, which I'm sure you know is good money, and then I would do like a 3-month contract or more, and then I would take a month off. And I always spent my time within the States because I sort of felt like I certainly want to travel internationally. I've done a little bit of international travel, but I feel like I could spend a lifetime in Red Rocks or a lifetime in Yosemite. I feel like there's just so many places that offer a lifetime of exploration. So certainly I want to travel the world, and I really do love the idea of spending time. I've been to Thailand. I visited a friend who lives in Tehran, in Bangkok. I visited her in Thailand, and I spent a month in Bangkok, and she was there for 2 months, and I spent the rest of the time kind of wandering around by myself, which also felt kind of weird being let's just say, when I saw other solitary Anglo men, I was sort of secretly trying to assess whether they were like a sex tourist or not. So being a lone white guy in Bangkok, I was like, what vibe? I was trying my best to not give off creepy lone white guy vibes, but that's neither here nor there. Well, it is sort of there in that, like, being there for a while, I stayed at this hostel, and I kind of got to know everybody, whatever that means. I got to meet some expats. That was a month. A month felt like, and I'm sure 6 months, a year, a decade, all those things would have their own sort of benchmarks. But you touched on, sorry dude, it's 3 minutes. I'm trying to just do this in one take and not have to edit it. The gist, there's a million things I could say about it, but the one sort of central thing that I really wanted to address is, here, I'll give you some, well, no, I can't flip the camera around. I was going to give you some scenery. I'm in southwestern Oregon at the moment. It's pretty right now. It's raining, of course, but it's beautiful. I think a lot of these questions come down to what your values are. And I think this is really relevant. And you address this really well when you talk about financial independence or finances in general. There isn't necessarily a right answer. Financial independence isn't inherently about being an aesthetic. I'm sure we both know people who are financially independent, who live in great big houses and drive an Audi, or there's and they're doing it in a financially sustainable way, and that matters to them. And I don't judge that as being shallow. I think it's I'm judging that as sort of shallow and materialistic. Your point about people's experience, people being sort of materialistic about experiences. There's something called did I read this in was it Alan Watts who was I was listening to for reading who was talking about spiritual materialism. I think that was Alan Watts, and how there's a way of being a materialist about non-material things, and you can be. It's still. It's the process, not the thing, that matters. So you can be an aesthetic dirtbag living out of your 1998 Toyota pickup out in at Indian Creek, and just be at best like a cranky asshole, and at worst like someone who's, let's just say, not living a life you want to emulate, not a person who you want to spend time with or have a relation with. And then there's people who are, by external observation, have lots of nice things and have lots of money and seem to care about status and their appearance, and maybe even they have like lip filler and whatever, like all these things that sort of the dirtbag in me might want to judge, but they're wonderful, rich, dynamic, connected people who really, if it came right down to it, could throw all that shit away and be happy. But they're not missing the forest for the trees and pretending that for whatever reason they don't value or care about those things. And so so to answer your question about being here or being there, I think it depends on the person's temperament and what they value. So gosh, I hope that makes sense. It's like 7 minutes. I hope my point is clear. I'm really trying to interact more with the sort of thinkers in the spaces I care about. I'm a nurse and a climber, and I'm a flight nurse, and I have various interests in various communities where I listen to people talk about stuff, and I want to engage with that. Sometimes I hesitate because I feel like I don't have the clearest thesis necessarily. So I hope this sort of rambling response kind of makes sense. I guess the gist of it is, I think the right question with all of these questions about what is the right way, I think the starting place is always, well, what are your values? And then you kind of work from there. And then there are some like hard and fast rules, like, you probably, if what you value, we can assume with climbing, value your life. You can assume if we're talking about finances, you value some amount of financial independence at some point. Like, you don't want to be destitute. If you're talking about climbing, you probably don't want to be a quadriplegic. If you're talking about relationships, you're probably not wanting to hurt people. There's sort of these basic assumptions, and then from there, what are your values beyond that? What do you really value? What do you want? What really speaks to you? In what types of spaces historically have you come through that experience and felt like, wow, I've really grown? Because I said I was done, but I'm not done. But how many people, how many people have you met who, oh my God, traveling really, part of why I'm such an open-minded person is traveling. Really, everyone needs to travel. I used to be such a materialist until I started traveling. It really opened my mind. Did you know in Oaxaca, and it's particularly, I'm sure this exists in other communities, but I can only speak to my own community and my own lived experience of annoying white liberals, and I can say that as an annoying white liberal, of just like, just how many people are just how many vapid, boring ass, and sometimes selfish and sociopathic. Some people travel because they just, it's like travel nursing. Some people are travel nurses. I hope I'm in this first category. Some people travel because they're very good at being an ER nurse, and they want to explore, and they want to see new systems, and they want to be in new places, and they want to meet new people. They want to have new good relationships. Other people travel because they can't keep a job anywhere, and they're super sketchball, and they can't keep relationships because they fucking suck. And the reality is, whatever. Maybe they have unresolved trauma. I'll be more generous. But similarly with travel, even just in my limited international travel, so I've been to Thailand, I've been to various places in Canada and Mexico. There you go. That's my lazy, lazy white guy American traveling history. But even those experiences, people you meet in hostels are like, this person feels like a sexual predator, and I'm glad I am not in his sights. And there's just so the experience alone of traveling. It's just sort of like experience with climbing in general. Like if someone says, I've been climbing for 20 years, okay, that just means you're not dead. What does that mean? It means you bought a harness 20 years ago, you bought your first crash pad, you watched Masters of Stone 5. Like what happened where you decided, those are all things that I've done where I decided I'm a climber. What was the experience? What was the event where you started counting that you were a climber? It's the things that matter are the moves that I do, the relationships I have, how I process that experience, how I integrate those experiences into my identity. And yeah, you have met, and the irony is we travel, and so often the types of experiences people talk about when they travel, they talk about going to sometimes a little town, and in that little town they met a nice person who has lived there their whole lives and who was pleasant to them and gave them food. And you can and yes, I mean, I want to travel more. I want to travel all over the world. Yeah, I will travel more because I do think there's value in it, but I can have those experiences here, and I'm not gonna, and it's potentially more room for growth there that I'm not gonna other than this dipshit who just cut me off in their fucking Yukon. Sorry. See, so here you go. So here I am in southeastern Oregon, and someone cuts me off, and some little light goes off in my head. It says fucking redneck. That's my prejudice. That's my bias. I'm a New Yorker. My northeastern liberal, cranky liberal New York urban bias. Fucking redneck. It's a shitty prejudice on my part that I'm working on. If I met that same sort of, there's a version of that person in Thailand. But if I saw them, I'd be like, oh, what an interesting, my annoying white liberal self. Oh, what a fascinating local culture. So yeah, I don't know. I've kind of gone off the rails, dude. I'm going to stop right now. I'm amazed if you've chosen to listen to this. Thank you kindly. I really admire your capacity to cover so many projects, so many topics, from finance to climbing to just how to live one's life, and also music and movies and stuff, in a way that feels organized. And I really admire that and wish to emulate it in some way. So thank you very much. Happy New Year. Bye.